The air on the planet Lyra 3 was always sweet. It smelled of rain on warm soil and the soft, blue pollen from the willow-like Solara trees. Sujin knelt in the middle of a new meadow, her gloved hands gently pressing soil around the roots of a fragile, silver-leafed fern. "Easy now," she whispered, not to the plant, but to the small, six-legged creature watching her from a nearby rock. The Kiral blinked its large, liquid eyes. A year ago, this valley had been a scar of melted rock and toxic dust from the Valerian-Severin skirmish. Now, it breathed again. Thanks to her and the team's work, a soft chime came from her wrist comm, a message from June, her friend back on the main orbital station. "Council session is starting. They're debating the Crick situation. Our petition is on the docket. Fingers crossed." Sujin sighed. A small cloud of vapor in the cool air. Humanity's petition. The Galactic Council was voting on whether to include humans in their mutual defense pact. The Crick's hegemony was pushing borders, absorbing smaller species. Everyone was nervous. Everyone, it seemed, except the Council about humans. On the orbital station above Lyra 3, June scrolled through historical texts in the shared galactic archive. His task was to document the ecological restoration, but his mind was elsewhere. He pulled up the public feed of the Galactic Council chamber, a vast, circular room with floating platforms for the different species. Ambassador Min stood calmly on the human platform, a simple, gray-clad figure among the glittering, bioluminescent, or metallic forms of the other species. The Valerian counselor, an elder being with slender, bark-like skin and wise, slow-moving eyes, was speaking. Its voice, translated, was a soft rustle in June's ear. "The data is clear," the Valerian said. "For over 2 centuries of their known spacefaring history, humans have not initiated a single interstellar conflict. Their resources flow into medical research, ecological curation, historical preservation, and art. They are healers of wounds, not makers of them." A holographic display flickered to life above the chamber. It showed humans like Sujin tending to wounded alien forests. It showed June and others like him painstakingly rebuilding digital libraries for species that had lost theirs to disasters. It showed human ships delivering aid, not weapons. "The Crick's threat is one of martial force," the Valerian continued. "To meet it, we need martial unity. The human psychological and cultural profile is one of deep-seated conflict aversion. Their entire modern identity is built upon the trauma of their own ancient wars. They do not just avoid war, they dread it. To bring such a species into a defensive pact would be to introduce a core of panic, a reluctance to act when action is needed. They are, by nature, curators, excellent, gentle curators of broken things. Let us allow them to continue this vital, peaceful work." June felt a hot flush creep up his neck. Not anger, but a deep, frustrating sadness. They saw the effect but misunderstood the cause entirely. On his screen, he opened a private file. It was a picture of his great-grandmother as a young woman, standing in front of a domed city under a hazy yellow sky. The caption read, "Soul Reclamation, Year 42 Post-Winter." The Crick's ambassador, a being of chitin and sharp angles, clacked its mandibles. "The Valerian speaks truth. Humans are soft. They value single lives too much to make the hard choices. Their military vessels are few and are designed for disaster response and scientific survey. They are not warriors. Including them would weaken the pact, not strengthen it. They are a moral support, not a tactical one." Ambassador Min waited for the translation to finish. His face was a polite mask. "Counselors, the human proposal is not for offensive capability. It is for mutual defense. Our dread of war, as you call it, is precisely why we are a reliable partner. We understand the cost of failure absolutely. We would defend this alliance with the full weight of that understanding." The Valerian counselor swayed gently, a sign of polite negation. "Your understanding is philosophical. Ambassador Min, ours must be practical. The fear of loss can paralyze. When the Crick's warships appear, we cannot have allies frozen by the memory of old ghosts." The vote was called. Each species' platform glowed with light. Green for yes, red for no. The human petition for inclusion in the Galactic Mutual Defense Accord. June watched, his breath held. One by one, the lights glowed red. A few greens flickered from smaller species humanity had helped, but it wasn't enough. The final tally was decisively against. The High Chancellor, a serene being of light, spoke. The petition is denied. The Galactic Council thanks humanity for its continued peaceful contributions. We encourage you to persist in your restorative and curatorial missions, which bring great harmony to the community. On the platform, Ambassador Min gave a small, stiff bow. The decision is noted. Thank you for your time, counselors. The feed cut off. June sat in the quiet of the archive. The silence felt heavy. He typed a message to Sujin down on the planet. Petition denied. The gentle curators must continue gardening. Minutes later, her reply came, simple and clear. They see the gardens. They don't see the fences. Down in the meadow, Sujin looked up at the sky. The station was a tiny speck among the stars. She stroked the silver fern one more time. The survival was not guaranteed. It was delicate. It needed protection from frost, from pests, from being crushed. Her care for it was not born of fear. It was born of a fierce, determined will that something beautiful must not be allowed to die. The Galactic Council saw the careful hands and called it dread. They did not see the steel in the spine, forged in fires they had never known, that made those hands so careful in the first place. They had looked at humanity's monuments and museums and seen only relics of fear. They had not understood they were looking at detailed, gruesome instruction manuals on what happens when restraint fails. Sujin stood, brushing soil from her knees. The Kirill chirped and scampered back into the new undergrowth. The meadow was safe for now. She walked back to her habitat, the sweet air feeling suddenly thin. Like the calm before a storm, the heavens themselves refused to believe was coming. June left the orbital archive. The walk to the transport shuttle felt longer than usual. The station was busy with different species. A group of Valerian scholars passed him, their leaf-like robes rustling softly. They gave him a polite nod, their eyes holding a trace of what looked like pity. He nodded back, his face neutral that he needed to talk to Era. Era lived on Earth in a quiet coastal reclamation zone. She was older, retired from her work years ago, but June knew she still saw things clearly. She understood the patterns. He requested a private comm link. It was very early in the morning where she was, but she answered right away. Her face appeared on the screen, sharp and calm. She sat in a room filled with books made of real paper. A window behind her showed a gray ocean under a pale sky. The petition failed, June said. It wasn't a question. I watched, Era replied. Her voice was steady. The Valerian speech was poetic. Curators of broken things. They see our museums and memorials as signs of fear, a trauma response. They think we are scared to break more toys. June sank into his seat. Exactly. They think our peace is weakness. A flaw. No, Era said, shaking her head slowly. It is not a flaw. It is a choice. The hardest choice a species can make. They fight small wars every few generations. They lose ships, soldiers. It is painful, but it is a normal pain to them. Their history has no true zero point. Ours does. She turned and looked out at the ocean for a moment. They don't understand what dread really means. They think it is a fear of getting hurt. For us, it is the memory of having already been burned to the bone. Era turned back to the screen. Come down to Earth, June. Not to a city. Come here. I want to show you something. Not a database file. Something real. June didn't ask why. He just booked the next shuttle down. The trip took hours. He landed at a small coastal port. The air here was different from Lyra 3. It was cool and smelled of salt and concrete and a faint, clean scent he knew was from the massive seawater purification banks nearby. He took a ground car to Era's residence. Her home was simple, built from recycled composites, overlooking the sea. She met him at the door and led him inside, not to the book-filled room, but to a small, plain study. On a desk was a single, old-fashioned data slate. It looked heavy and outdated. This was my grandfather's, Era said, placing her hand on it. Then my mother's. It is not connected to any network. It has never been in the Galactic Archive. It is a personal record. She powered it on. The screen glowed with a soft, old light. The Council sees our public history, the clean version, the summaries. They see Second Nuclear Winter as a phrase in a report. They do not see what the phrase contains. She opened a file. It was a video, grainy, shaky from a helmet cam. The timestamp was in the old style over 200 years ago. This is from the Sol Reclamation Corps. Year 7 post-winter, Era said, her voice becoming very quiet. She pressed play. June saw a world of gray ash. The sky was not blue, but a sickly yellow-brown. Figures in heavy protective suits moved like ghosts through a landscape of jagged, blackened shapes that might have been buildings. There were no voices, just the static hiss of a dead radio channel and the crunch of boots on cinders. The camera panned. It passed a row of forms under gray sheets, lined up on what had been a street. So small. Children. The camera jerked away quickly, as if the person holding it could not bear to look. It focused instead on a piece of broken metal, a twisted sign with faded letters in Hangul. The person reached a gloved hand and wiped ash from it. The word was just barely visible. It meant school. The video jumped. Now it showed the inside of a dome. People crowded together, their faces thin, eyes hollow. They were sorting seeds, one seed at a time. A woman's hands trembled so badly she dropped one. She stared at it on the floor as if she had dropped a diamond, then slowly, painfully, bent to pick it up. The screen went black. The room was silent. June realized he had been holding his breath. He had seen historical summaries before, of course. Clean graphs of population decline, maps of impacted zones. He had never seen the ash on the glove. He had never seen the trembling hands. This, Era said, tapping the dark screen, is what we mean by cost. This is the data point the Council is missing. They think we are afraid of what might be. We are anchored by the memory of what was. We are not curators because we are gentle. We are curators because we have seen the absolute opposite of creation. We know exactly what we are trying to prevent. She put the slate away. They denied our pact because they believe our memory will make us hesitate. They are wrong. It is the only thing that will make us act with total, decisive purpose. We are not afraid to fight, June. We are committed to never, ever needing to fight that kind of war again. And that commitment has teeth. June looked from the slate to the window, to the calm, rebuilt world outside. The two images did not match. Yet they were the same story. The quiet outside was not an accident. It was an achievement, a victory bought with the lives in that gray video. So what do we do now? He asked. We wait, Era said. And we prepare. The Cricks see the same thing the Council sees. Gardeners and historians. They will make a move. They will target something we have built, something we care for. They will think it will make us beg the Council for help. A small, hard smile touched her lips. It held no joy. And when they do, the Council will finally see. They will see that our dread does not lead to panic. It leads to a cold, clear, and utterly terrible certainty. We are not paralyzed by the past. We are instructed by it. June left her house as the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the reclaimed land. The ghostly figures from the video seemed to walk beside him in those shadows. He no longer felt sad about the Council's vote. He felt a strange, solid calm. The Council had looked at humanity's scars and seen only weakness. They had not understood. A scar is not just a reminder of a wound. It is also proof you survived it. And a being that has survived its own end once will do anything, absolutely anything, to prevent it from happening again. He looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there was Sujin, tending her meadow. Somewhere were the Cricks, planning their next move. And here was Earth, quiet, watching, remembering. The waiting had begun. Sujin woke to the sound of alarms. It was not the gentle chime of a schedule reminder. It was a harsh, pulsing siren that echoed through the entire habitat dome on Lyra 3. A red light flashed on the ceiling, painting the room in urgent strokes. She was on her feet in an instant, pulling on her field suit. Her heart hammered, but her hands moved with practiced speed, checking seals and connections. The comm unit on her wrist blared with a robotic voice. Orbital breach detected. Unauthorized fleet signatures in the outer system. All personnel to designated shelters. This is not a drill. Crix, it had to be. She grabbed her primary data slate, the one that held the genetic maps of the entire Lyran restoration project. As she ran from her room into the central corridor, other members of the team spilled out of their doors. A few other humans, some Valerian botanists, a trio of small, furry geks who helped with soil aeration. Their faces were tight with confusion and fear. "The shelters are in the central core," Sujin shouted, pointing down the main passage. "Go! Now!" The floor shuddered. A distant, muffled thump rolled through the ground. That was not in orbit. That was atmospheric. They were bombing the surface. "They're hitting the western ridge," yelled Ben, a geologist from Mars. "The seed vault is there." Sujin's blood went cold. The seed vault held the only surviving samples of dozens of native Lyran plant species, painstakingly collected over 5 years. It was buried deep, but not deep enough for a direct hit. Another impact closer this time. The lights flickered. Dust sifted from the ceiling. The geks whimpered, clinging to each other. "Move!" Sujin commanded, herding them forward. She was the lead xenobotanist. They were her responsibility. As they ran, she pulled up the planetary defense network on her slate. It was chaos. The Galactic Council's small garrison fleet was a bright cluster of green icons, moving to intercept a swarm of red Crix signatures. But the red icons were faster, more numerous. They were bypassing the fleet, diving toward the planet, toward the restoration zones. Her shelter was a reinforced bunker near the heart of the research complex. As the heavy door sealed behind her team, she saw the main visual feed on the wall screen. The view was from an orbital camera. Crix dropships, shaped like angry arrowheads, were screaming down through the atmosphere, trailing fire. They were not heading for military targets. They were heading for the green. Living parts of the Planet Point 1 cluster was on a direct course for her valley. "No," she whispered on the screen. She saw the first plasma bolts lance down. They struck the western ridge in flashes of blinding white. When the light faded, the ridge was gone, replaced by a smoking, glassy crater. The seed vault was erased. Tears of pure rage blurred her vision. She blinked them away. Rage was useless. Data was not. She switched her slate to record. She patched into the habitat's external sensors, visual, thermal, atmospheric. She began capturing everything. The feed showed the meadow where she had planted the silver ferns. The sky above it darkened with the shadows of the dropships. "This is lead xenobotanist Sujin, Ida-77 Alpha on Lyra 3, she said, her voice flat and clear, devoid of the tremor she felt inside. "The Crix hegemony is conducting an unprovoked attack on a council-protected restoration world. I am transmitting real-time sensor data of the assault on the primary eastern ecological zone." The first bolt hit the northern edge of the meadow. The explosion was silent on the feed, but the ground shockwave rippled the grass like water. Dirt and fire erupted. The ancient Solara trees at the edge, which had taken 50 years to grow, vaporized in an instant. A Crix ship slowed, hovering low. A different weapon fired, a shimmering wave of energy. Where it touched the land, the plants didn't burn. They withered, blackened, and crumbled to dust in seconds. A chemical or biological agent. They weren't just destroying. They were sterilizing. They were burning the library of life. Her Kirill, the little 6-legged creature, would be out there. The ferns, the mosses, the entire delicate, breathing network she had spent years nursing back from the brink. It was being systematically erased. Her team around her was crying. Some were cursing. One of the Valerians made a low, mourning sound, like a tree groaning in the wind. Sujin felt something inside her settle into a cold, hard knot. This was not an act of war for territory. This was an act of cruelty. A message. They were targeting humanity's soft work to prove a point. They were breaking the delicate things to show how strong they were. The main habitat dome took a glancing hit from a plasma bolt. The screen showing the outside feed went black. The bunker lights flickered again, and a new alarm sounded for a pressure breach in the outer sections. They were running out of time. Sujin finished her data packet. It contained the last 3 minutes of sensor logs, the targeting patterns, the energy signatures, the total, pointless destruction of a place of peace. She added a single line of text. Not a plea for help. Not a scream of anger. It was a simple, factual report. She addressed it to 2 places: the Galactic Council Emergency Channel and the Human Fleet Command frequency, which every human scientist was taught but never thought they would use. The message read, "They are burning the libraries of life. Sensor data attached. Sujin out." She hit send. The slate showed the data streaming out into the void. A tiny digital cry from a dying world. A tremendous impact shook the bunker. The ceiling groaned, and a crack split the wall. Dust poured in. The main lights died, replaced by dim red emergency strips. "The door is compromised," Ben shouted. Sujin looked at her team, their faces pale in the red light. The data was gone. Her work was gone. The library was burning. But the message was sent. She picked up a fallen support rod, her hands steady. The Cricks thought humanity dreaded war. They thought breaking beautiful things would make humans break. As the final, wrenching sound of tearing metal echoed towards them from the corridor, Sujin understood something. The dread was gone. In its place was a clear, empty space, waiting to be filled with a single, focused purpose. They had shown her what they were. Now, someone would have to show them what humanity was when you crossed that final, sacred line. She hoped the Council was watching. She hoped they understood the data. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was absolute. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the heavy, breathless quiet that follows a terrible noise. The main holographic display hovered in the center of the room. It showed the last image from Lyra 3's primary sensor array before it was destroyed. A lush, green valley, now scarred with black smoking craters. The feed had ended with the screaming whine of a Crix plasma weapon charging. The Crix ambassador stood on its platform. His posture was one of sharp, confident angles. A surgical strike, its translated voice clacked. The human-supported outpost was a legitimate military target. It provided logistical support to Council forces. The hegemony regrets any ecological disruption. The Valerian counselor's bark-like skin was pale, a sign of deep distress. There were no weapons there, only seeds, only scientists. You have destroyed 200 years of regrowth. You have murdered. We have removed a potential threat, the Crix replied, and we have demonstrated the futility of relying on the weak. Where is the human response? Silence. We told you. They are curators. They will now come to you, weeping, begging for your protection. They dread real conflict. The High Chancellor, the being of light, pulsed with a soft, troubled rhythm. We are monitoring all human communications. There has been no panic broadcast, no demand for aid. This is unexpected. They are in shock, the Crix said, a note of triumph in its voice. Their delicate minds cannot process violence. They are hiding. At that moment, a secondary alert chimed. A human transmission, flagged as high priority, was received. It was not from their government. It was from the planet itself. Put it through, the High Chancellor ordered. The display changed. It showed shaky, awful footage from the ground. The view of the meadow, the plasma blasts, the withering wave that killed the land. The data scrolled beside it, technical readouts of the weapons used. It was a cold, factual record of an atrocity. The final frame held a single line of text, clean and simple against the chaos. They are burning the libraries of life. Sensor data attached. Sujin out. The transmission ended. The chamber returned to silence, but it was a different kind now. The humans had not sent a cry. They had sent a report. Before anyone could speak, the main entrance to the chamber hissed open. Ambassador Min walked in. He did not run. His steps were measured, firm on the polished floor. He was alone. His gray suit was perfectly neat. His face was calm, like the surface of a deep, still lake. Every species representative watched him. They waited for the tears, the anger, the pleas. The Crick's ambassador shifted, ready to mock. Min reached the human platform. He did not look at the Cricks. He looked at the High Chancellor, then let his gaze sweep across the assembled council. You received the data from Lyra 3, Min said. It was not a question. We did, the High Chancellor replied. We offer our deepest condolences for the loss of your people and their work. Rest assured, we will deliberate on a proportional response to this aggression. Min gave a small, slow nod. Your condolences are noted. Your deliberation is not required. A ripple of confusion went through the chamber. The Crick's ambassador clacked its mandibles in a laugh. See? Denial. The first stage of grief. Min ignored it. He continued, his voice clear and carrying. When we petitioned for inclusion in your mutual defense accord, the Valerian counselor described humanity. You said we dread war, that our culture is a trauma response, that we are curators, not warriors. You were correct on one point. He paused, letting his words hang. We do dread war, but you have misunderstood the nature of that dread. You see it as a fear of violence. It is not. It is the memory of a cost so high, it becomes a mathematical certainty. We do not fear the first shot. We have calculated the last one long ago. He tapped a control on his platform. The central display changed again. It did not show space fleets or weapons. It showed a simple, old document. A scan of a handwritten page, in the angular script of Old Korean. Next to it was a translation. Day 117. The ashfall has lessened. We recovered 3 more from the collapsed school. No survivors. We used the last of the medical supplies on the child with radiation burns. She died at dawn. Our food calculation is now insufficient. We must choose who works the hydroponics and who does not. We are no longer people. We are calculators of death. Min looked at the Valerian counselor. This is not a poem. This is a log entry. From the second nuclear winter. It is one of millions. We have not forgotten a single digit of the equation. He closed the document. The display now showed the symbol of the human fleet. A simple blue circle encompassing a green chute and a shielded spear. You believed our dread would paralyze us. You were wrong. It instructs us. It provides a single, clear rule. Such a cost must never be paid again. The Cricks have now activated our ultimate contingency protocols. You called it dread. You were wrong. It is recognition. The Cricks ambassador scoffed. Recognition of what? Your own weakness? You have no fleet. You have no will. Min finally turned to look at the Cricks. His eyes were like stone. We recognized you. We classified you. The moment you fired on a restoration world, you moved from potential adversary to existential pathogen. You are not an enemy to be defeated. You are a threat to be removed. He turned back to the High Chancellor. The Galactic Council's assessment of humanity is now concluded. You have the data from Lyra 3. You have our statement. Do not interfere with the operation that is now underway. Operation? The High Chancellor pulsed. What operation? Ambassador Min, we urge calm. There are diplomatic channels. The channels closed when the bombs fell on the libraries. Min interrupted, his voice still quiet but final. A quarantine protocol has been initiated. Stand Azide. He gave a short, formal bow. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, just as calmly as he had entered. The doors closed behind him. The silence he left behind was total and deafening. The council members looked at each other. The Valerian counselor was trembling, its leafy fronds pressed tight against its body. The Crick's ambassador broke the silence with a derisive click. Quarantine. A grand word for hiding. They are bluffing. They hope we will fear their ghosts, their empty museums. But the High Chancellor was not looking at the Cricks. It was studying the last image from Lyra 3, the burning meadow, the simple text of Sujin's message. It was replaying Min's words. Not the tone, which was calm, but the content, which was ice-cold. For the first time, the being of light felt a chill. It had watched countless conflicts, heard countless threats. This was different. This was not a threat. This was a diagnosis. And a doctor did not rage at a disease. A doctor simply, methodically eradicated it. Order all Council observation ships near human space. The High Chancellor said, its light flickering. Move to a safe distance. Record everything. Do not engage. You cannot be serious, the Krix ambassador shouted. I am, the High Chancellor said, its voice suddenly heavy. You wanted to see the human response. It appears you are about to. The rest of us will watch. We will see what reality looks like when it hits. The silence from human space was not a void. It was a held breath. Across the Galactic Council's observation networks, nothing seemed to change. Human trade vessels continued their slow, steady routes. Their border beacons pulsed their usual friendly signals. It was maddeningly calm. The Krix propaganda channels were full of triumphant chatter, calling humanity paralyzed, ghost-ridden, defeated by a single stroke. Era watched all of this from her home on Earth. The retired strategic analyst sat in her study, a cup of cold tea beside her. On one screen was the Council's public feed. On another was a private, secure line to a young officer named Tay. His face was serious, his uniform plain. The Council expects panic or a wild charge, Era said softly. They are waiting for an emotional reaction. They will wait forever.
Tay nodded.
The Krix battle group that hit Lyra 3 is regrouping in the Dexter system. They are celebrating. Their defenses are at routine levels. Era's eyes were old and saw very far. They believe we built ships for war. We did not. We built tools for the permanent negation of threats. We hoped they would rust in their docks. The Krix just removed the safety lock. She pulled up a schematic on her screen. It did not look like a warship. It was smooth, almost featureless, like a river stone. The Chilsong-class vessel. What does it carry, Lieutenant Tay? Tay answered by rote, his voice flat. Primary armament, gravitic shear projectors. Effect. Creates a microscopic singularity field along a target vector. It does not explode matter. It shears the molecular bonds holding it together. Secondary. Systemic electronic warfare suite. Effect. Overwhelms all known sensor and communication bands with coherent noise. Not jamming. Erasure. And its purpose? Era asked. To render a hostile force incapable of function, communication, or coherent resistance. To remove their ability to be a threat. Not to destroy them. Destruction can be chaotic. Survival can spread hatred. Our goal is removal. A knife does not hate the tumor. It cuts. Era allowed herself a small, cold smile. Good. The Council called us curators. They are correct. We are about to curate the Krix from the battlefield. Show them. On Tay's end, a quiet alarm chimed. The Mujigi and its battle group have reached the Dexter system boundary. Engagement is imminent. Open a channel to the Council observation post there, Era said. Send them the courtesy of a live feed. No commentary. Let them see the work. In the Dexter system, the Krix fleet hung in the void near a purple gas giant. They were 23 ships, angular and cruel-looking, their weapons still warm from Lyra 3. Their sensors painted the empty space around them. It was clear. Then, without warning, space rippled. It was like a heat haze, but in the cold dark. 6 human ships slid into reality. They did not emerge with the fiery tear of Krix warp drives. They simply appeared. Silently. Their surfaces were a non-reflective gray, absorbing light, making them look like holes cut in the starfield. The Krix reacted with trained speed. Their comms filled with orders. Targeting systems locked. Energy weapons glowed as they charged. The human ships did not fire. They did not raise shields. They simply activated the Systemic Electronic Warfare Suite. To the Krix, and to the watching Council observers, every screen, every sensor, every communication channel in the entire system turned to blinding, screaming static. It was not a broken signal. It was a wall of pure, mathematically perfect noise. Radios died. Targeting computers went blind. Navigator charts dissolved into fuzz. For the Cricks, the universe suddenly became a small, dark room filled with a deafening roar. They were blind, deaf, and dumb in the void. The human ships moved. They were not fast in a dramatic way. They were precise like the hands of a surgeon. They closed the distance. A Crick's commander, flying blind, fired a plasma volley in the direction he last saw the humans. The bolts streaked into empty space. A human ship, the Mujigi, slid into the path of the Crick's flagship. It fired its gravitic shear projector. There was no beam of light. No explosión. Space itself seemed to wrinkle along a line from the human ship to the Crick's vessel. Where that ripple touched the Crick's ship's hull, the metal did not melt or burn. It simply came apart. The hull peeled into its component molecules, like a sandwich being pulled into slices of bread, meat, and cheese. The ship silently disassembled into a cloud of glittering dust, its inner decks exposed to vacuum for a brief second before Tamiya unraveled and no life pods ejected. There was no time, no systems left to launch them. The other human ships went to work. They did not attack randomly. They moved from ship to ship, using the shear projectors to slice off weapon arrays, engine clusters, and command decks. They dismantled the Crick's fleet piece by piece with terrifying calm. It was not a battle. It was a dismantling. One Crick's frigate, its systems dead, tried to turn and flee. A human ship matched its course. The shear projector activated. The frigate's engines separated from the main hull and drifted away, powerless. The rest of the ship hung, dead in the water. Within 20 minutes, it was over. The screaming static ceased. Silence returned to the comm bands. The Crick's fleet was gone. In its place was a diffuse, expanding cloud of metal powder and frozen debris. One half-dissected ship hung dormant, its innards exposed, completely harmless. The 6 human ships regrouped. They did not celebrate. They did not transmit any message of victory. They scanned the debris field once. Then their engines glowed with a soft blue light. Space rippled around them again, and they vanished as quietly as they had arrived. On the Council observation post, the Valerian science officer was trembling so hard it could not control its limbs. The playback of the sensor data showed the same thing over and over. Not an explosion, an unraveling. The High Chancellor received the raw feed. It watched the complete clinical dismantling of a fleet. There was no rage in it. No glory. Only a horrifying, absolute efficiency. The human ships had moved with the emotion of a gardener pulling weeds. Back on Earth, Era looked at the frozen image of the debris cloud. She sipped her cold tea. Tay's voice came over the secure line. Operation concluded. Crick's military presence in Dexter system removed. No human casualties. No collateral damage to the system's planets or orbitals. Understood, Era said. Proceed to Phase 2. Continue the quarantine. She closed the link. Outside her window, the ocean was calm. The fence around the garden had just been demonstrated. It was not made of wood. It was made of the same material as the scalpel that had cut the cancer. The galaxy had watched. They had seen humanity's response. It was not a roar of anger. It was the silent, precise click of a lock turning. The Council had thought they were dealing with a species that dreaded war. They now saw the truth. Humanity did not dread the fight. They dreaded the necessity so deeply. They had engineered a way to make fighting not a contest, but a foregone conclusion. Reality had not just hit. It had performed a perfectly clean, utterly terrifying dissection. The Valerian Counselor stared at the holographic replay. Again and again, the smooth human ship slid forward. Again and again, space wrinkled, and a Crick's vessel came silently apart. There was no fire, no screaming metal, just deconstruction. Around the Council chamber, other species watched in the same horrified silence. The Crick's ambassador's platform was empty. It had been recalled in a fury after the Dexter system report. The silence from the Crick's homeworld was now sharp and frantic, not triumphant. The High Chancellor's light flickered with unstable patterns. Analysis? It asked the chamber, its voice barely a whisper. A tactical officer, a species of quick-thinking avians, spoke with a trembling chirp. The humans did not engage in combat. They performed a system-wide disablement. Their electronic weapon did not just jam signals. It erased them. Their primary weapon does not cause explosions. It causes targeted atomic disintegration. This is not war technology. This is forensic. It is removal. The Valerian counselor finally found its voice, a dry rustle. We mistook their memorials for weakness. We saw the tombs and thought they were only for the dead. It turned its wise, old eyes to the image of the dissolving ship. They were not tombstones. They were caution signs. And we did not read the warning. New data streamed into the chamber. The human fleet was not stopping. After Dexter, they had moved, not in a wild rush toward Crick space, but in a slow, deliberate pattern. They were jumping from system to system, methodically targeting every Crick's military outpost, shipyard, and patrol group. They were not conquering. They were not taking territory. The reports all said the same thing. Human ships would appear. The terrible noise would fill all channels. Then, with surgical calm, they would dismantle every weapon, every engine, every command node. They left the Crick's personnel alive on their stations, floating in powerless hulls, waiting for rescue from their own people. The humans did not take prisoners. They just left broken tools behind. They are not seeking surrender, the avian officer chirped. They are making surrender irrelevant. They are eliminating the Crick's ability to be a military entity. They are moving toward the core systems. The High Chancellor pulsed with dull light. Their objective? A new voice, calm and familiar, spoke from the entrance. Ambassador Min had returned. He walked to his platform, his face still a mask of polite calm, but his eyes held the chill of deep space. Our objective was stated, Min said. Quarantine and removal of an existential pathogen. The Crick's hegemony, as a militaristic expansionist power, is being unmade. You are witnessing the procedure. This is extermination, a Severan delegate shouted, its frills flushing red. Min turned his head slowly. No. Extermination would be faster, and less just. We are not killing their people. We are deleting their capacity for organized violence. A lion is not evil, but if it repeatedly leaps into a nursery, you do not reason with it. You remove its teeth and claws. Permanently. The Valerian counselor felt a deep, shivering cold. It understood now. The humans were not acting from hatred. That was the most frightening part. They were acting from a terrible, clean logic. The same logic that made Sujin protect a single fern. The absolute conviction that a threat to life must be neutralized, completely and forever. You speak of them as a disease, the Valerian whispered. We speak of them as a problem that has one solution, Min corrected. We solved this problem for ourselves long ago. We built fences around our own worst instincts. The Cricks have shown they recognize no fences, so we are building one around them. The fence will be their complete and irreversible disarmament. On the main display, a new visual appeared. It was a live feed from the edge of the Cricks core worlds. A massive Cricks defense fleet, hundreds of ships strong, had assembled to make a final stand. It was the proud might of the hegemony. The human fleet arriving was tiny by comparison, maybe 30 ships. They will be overwhelmed, the Severan delegate said, almost hoping for it. The battle began, or rather, the process repeated. The human ships vanished from sensors for a moment. Then the electronic scream erupted, not just in one spot, but across the entire vast Cricks formation. The wall of noise was impenetrable. Then, from within the heart of the confused Cricks fleet, the human ships simply appeared. They had not jumped in from the edge. They had slipped through their own ripples in space directly into the middle of the enemy. The dismantling began. It was not a battle of lines and charges. It was like watching rust spread, but in fast motion. A human ship would glide past a Cricks battleship, and the battleship's heavy guns would silently slide off their mounts. Another pass, and its engines drifted away. The human ships moved through the armada like gardeners pruning a wildly overgrown, thorny bush. Kalip, Kalip, Clip Point 1 Cricks commander, in a final act of defiance, tried to ram a human vessel. His ship, blind and deaf, accelerated on a last known course. A human ship did not move away. It turned slightly and fired the shear projector along the length of the charging vessel. The Crick's ship split into two perfect, longitudinal halves that drifted past the human ship. Harmless.it was over in less than an hour. The might of the Crick's core defense fleet was a cloud of component parts and silent, powerless hulls. The human fleet regrouped, untouched. They turned as one, facing the direction of the Crick's homeworld. The message that flashed from the lead human ship was not on a military channel. It was on a common civilian frequency, translated into all known languages. It was addressed to the Crick's people, and copied to the entire Galactic Council.it showed two images side by side. One was the beautiful green meadow of Lyra 3, before the attack. The other was the same meadow, scarred and burning. The text below was simple. You burned a library. We are putting out the fire. The fire is your ability to make war. Stand down. The next system is your home.in the council chamber. The Valerian counselor looked from the brutal efficiency of the fleet action to the simple, powerful message. The connection was clear, and it was devastating. This was not conquest. This was a response. A proportional response on a scale the galaxy did not understand. They had not just defeated the Crick's fleet. They had translated the burning of a meadow into the unmaking of a star empire. The human ships began to move again, toward the Crick's home star. The High Chancellor spoke, its light dim. Ambassador Min, what happens if they do not stand down? Min looked at the display, at the 30 smooth stones moving toward a world. His voice was quiet, final. Then we will show you what never again looks like, when it has run out of patience. We will show you the tools we built, but hoped never to use to ensure our own species' survival. They are not weapons of war. They are weapons of finality. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every species. The choice is now theirs, and you are witnesses. Remember what you see. This is what happens when you mistake a fence for a decoration. The counselors looked at the humans not as gentle curators, but as surgeons standing over an operating table, scalpel in hand. The diagnosis was made. The procedure was underway. And they realized, with a sinking terror, that humanity did not dread war. They had simply moved past it, to something far more absolute. The Crick's homeworld was a dry, rust-colored planet. Its skies were usually busy with the trails of warships and heavy freighters. Now, the space above it was silent and filled with dying light. The last of its defense fleet was a field of dead metal. Drifting slowly apart, 30 human ships held position just beyond the orbit of its largest moon. They were still quiet. They made no move to attack the planet. They simply waited. In the Galactic Council chamber, no one moved. The live feed showed the human fleet on one side, the pale brown curve of the Crick's world on the other. It was a standoff, but it did not feel like one. It felt like the moment before a verdict is read. A new signal came through. Not from the humans, but from the Crick's homeworld itself. It was a request to open a channel with the human commander. The High Chancellor granted it, routing the audio to the entire chamber. The voice of the Crick's Supreme Archon came through. It was stripped of its usual pride. Sounded scratchy, thin, and very old. Human fleet, you have demonstrated your capability. You hold our world in your grasp. State your terms of surrender. We will listen. On the visual feed, a single small shuttle emerged from the largest human ship. It did not look like a warship. It looked like a simple transport. It flew slowly, deliberately, down toward the Crick's homeworld. No one fired on it. Ambassador Min spoke in the council chamber. That shuttle carries no weapons. Carries 3 people. Ambassador Min, for diplomacy. Historian June, for record-keeping. Analyst Era, for verification. We have come to offer terms in person. The chamber watched, stunned, as the shuttle entered the atmosphere and flew toward the main Crick's governmental spire. It was an unbelievable act of confidence, or madness. The shuttle landed on a central platform. The hatch opened. Min stepped out first, then June, then Era. They wore simple gray outfits, no armor, no visible weapons. They were surrounded by towering Crick soldiers, their claws sharp, their weapons raised. But the humans showed no fear. Era's eyes were calmly taking in the architecture. June held a data slate. Min looked straight ahead. They were led into the great hall of the Archon. The Archon itself was a massive, ancient Crix, its chitin faded and scarred. It looked down from a high platform. "You come to gloat?" The Archon's voice rasped. Min shook his head. "We come to offer a choice. A real one." He nodded to June. June lifted his slate and projected 2 images onto the floor of the hall. The first was the live feed from Lyra 3, still showing the smoking scars. The second was a historical image from Earth. A city of gray ash under a yellow sky. A child's shoe in the rubble. "You attacked a place of life," Min said, pointing to Lyra. "This was the result of our last great war," he said, pointing to the ash. "We know the path you are on. We have walked it. It ends only in that." The Archon shifted, its limbs clicking. "So you will bomb us into ash to prove your point? To punish us?" Era spoke now, her voice clear and analytical. "Punishment is inefficient. It creates future enemies. We are not here to punish you. We are here to end the threat you represent. Permanently." She took a step forward. "Your military is gone. Your shipyards are gone. Your capacity to project violence beyond this star is 0. The choice is this. You can accept this new reality, or we can create a different one." Min continued, "If you accept, we will help. We will send engineers, not soldiers. They will help you dismantle your remaining planetary weapons. They will help you convert your war industries to peaceful purposes. We will oversee this process for 1 generation. You will be disarmed, but you will not be destroyed. You will live." "And the other choice?" the Archon asked, though it seemed to already know. Min's face was solemn. "The other choice is that we apply the final option. We have weapons, relics from our own desperate past, designed for one purpose: to render a planet incapable of supporting an industrial civilization. Not to kill life, but to shatter the foundations of a war-making society. We would target your power grids, your fusion plants, your continent-scale manufactories. We would reduce your technology to pre-industrial levels. You would survive as simple farmers and hunters on a broken world. It would take you 10,000 years to climb back to where you are today." The hall was dead silent. The Crick soldiers looked at their Archon. The choice was not between victory and defeat. It was between a controlled, supervised peace and a forced, permanent return to a primitive past. The Archon seemed to shrink. "You would make us harmless." "Yes," Min said without a hint of shame. "That is the goal. A galaxy where you cannot burn libraries. A fence you cannot climb. The fence is either built with your cooperation, or it is carved into the bedrock of your world. You choose the method." Back in the council chamber, the Valerian counselor understood everything. Humanity was not offering peace. They were offering 2 different kinds of peacekeeping. One was gentle but firm. The other was geological. Both were absolute. The Archon closed its large, complex eyes. When it opened them, the fire was gone. Only exhaustion remained. It gave a slow, deep nod. "We accept your supervision. We will stand down." Min gave a small bow. "A wise choice." June tapped his slate. High above, the 30 human ships powered down their primary weapons. Their smooth surfaces reflected the light of the sun. One of them turned and, with a soft ripple, jumped away, back toward Lyra 3 to begin the rescue and recovery. Minutes later, in the council chamber, the 3 humans returned via shuttle. Min, June, and Era walked back to their platform. They looked tired, but calm. The High Chancellor pulsed with a soft, respectful light. "The Cricks have accepted your terms. The conflict is ended. You have achieved what our collective forces could not in a century of skirmishes." Min nodded. "We did not seek a conflict. We sought a conclusion." The Valerian counselor rose, its leafy robes trembling. "We judged you poorly. We called your dread a weakness." Min looked at the elder being. You saw the scar and thought it made us fragile. It made us strong. It told us exactly how much we could afford to lose. And the answer is nothing. Not a single meadow. Not a single library. Not ever again. He reached into a small case June carried. From it, he took two objects. He placed them carefully on the edge of the human platform for all to see. On the left was a fresh, green cutting from a Solara tree from Lyra 3, already rooting in a small tube of water. On the right was a small, heavy cylinder of dull metal. It was featureless except for a single, faded symbol. A circle with a line through it. The ancient human symbol for nullification. Min pointed to the green cutting. This is what we cultivate. His finger moved to the dull metal cylinder. This is the price we will extract to protect it. The two are inseparable. One cannot exist without the other. He looked around the silent, watching galaxy. The Choice Council is now yours. You have seen our nature. You can continue to see us as strange, fearful curators. Or you can see us as partners in building a peace that has real teeth. Peace that remembers. A peace that protects. Let us discuss what that peace looks like. He stepped back. The council looked from the vibrant, living plant to the inert, terrible weapon, and finally to the humans who saw them as two sides of the same coin. The dread was real. But it was not a dread of war. It was the dread of losing the things that made peace beautiful. And they had just proven, with terrifying clarity, that they would remove any threat to those things. Permanently. Reality had not just hit. It had settled in, taken a seat, and asked what they wanted to build next. The galaxy held its breath and began to think of a new answer.